guys. It's 9 o'clock on this Tuesday, this Tony P. Tuesday. And this is the live Zone Primetime. I'm producer Chris. That is Tony P. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're watching on Fox Local or you're watching on Fox 5 DC's YouTube page. Tony, it's been a busy day. You've been here all day.
I've been here, there, everywhere. Where in the world is Tony P? Right in this world.
Today, so, it was Fox 5 hosting the Take It To.
Take It To with you.
7 o'clock, like it or not. 7:30, do you like it or not? And then here we are for the Live Zone.
Always a joy. Also, was a guest for a little bit on Guys Live Zone.
On Guys Live Zone, yeah. Straddling both.
Double Live Zone today.
Double Live Zone, that's right. We're starting off tonight with what you've been watching all day, in between all of your hits here on Fox 5. And the first story I know you're talking about tonight literally just wrapped up minutes ago.
Right, exactly. So, of course, we had, and I'll cover this a little bit in the rundown, so President Trump traveled to Mount Poconos, Pennsylvania today to address affordability concerns among voters. Of course, as you see, that's been a major issue for the president in his polling in the last few months, has been anxiety about this economy. And even an article today, I think it was out of Time magazine, or not, sorry, Time, was saying that voters are really miserable with the Trump economy. So, of course, starting off his U.S. tour to talk to voters directly, there have been some concerns within the MAGA movement as well as independent voters that the president has not been vocal enough on the road talking about issues, and he's been too focused on foreign policy and issues of that nature. So tonight, as we just wrapped up, again, they had a whole hour and a half long live stream through Live Now and through us, where there was the president speaking in Mount Poconos, Pennsylvania, talking about lower prices and bigger paychecks, really getting into the affordability message. It looks like he is taking that message on the road for the foreseeable future. And what's really interesting is a couple weeks ago, and as we saw the Epstein file stuff collapse a little bit, he was talking about affordability being a hoax and Democrats made it up and they're frauds for talking about it. And now it seems with that big banner of lower cost, bigger paychecks, he's bringing the affordability message on the road. And we're going to find out if that works. What are some of the policies that might come out of Congress, not just at the end of this year, but into 2026, which is basically, you probably have between 3 and 4 months legislatively before it's all time for fundraising and all time for the midterm elections. So it is a tight window here for the president.
Before you know it. Of course, that wrapped up just seconds before we went on the air. Right now, we're keeping an eye out for the travel press pool when that live shot goes up and the president makes his way back here to Washington, D.C. We'll bring it to you live. But in the meantime, Tony P., talk to me about what else you've been watching today.
This may be, first of all, this may be a record for when the rundown gets started.
Right 9:02:47.
Right. I am honored, my friends. We already talked about President Trump and his big speech tonight, again, looking to expand upon what he calls his A++++ economy. So we'll see how that messaging works out. But back here in Washington, in the Congress today, Senate Majority Leader John Thune announced Thursday's dueling votes and the plan on that for competing plans on extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies expiring this month, of course, which is the big conversation among the government shutdown. The Republican proposal expands health savings accounts for people that purchase bare bones plans on the Obamacare exchanges, but it does not extend those subsidies, while Democrats want a 3-year extension on their bill. Neither is expected to pass, and Senator Schumer warns that premiums for 22 million Americans could more than double starting in January. As again, a lot of folks are still going through the open enrollment process, not just for the ACA exchanges, but also for their work plan. So folks, make sure you get those letters and file your healthcare choices coming up before the holidays. Back for the administration, the Trump administration is expanding social media scrutiny for foreign visitors. Starting December 15th, all H-1B and H-4 visa applications must set accounts to public and undergo an online presence review. Immigration attorneys warn even innocuous posts could trigger delays, and border agents have reportedly denied entry over messages criticizing the president. A New York judge today ordered the unsealing of grand jury materials from Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking case today, citing the new Epstein Files Transparency Act. The judge cautioned not to expect major revelations beyond identifying Maxwell and Epstein themselves and their actions. The Justice Department has until December 19th, of course, to release all related Epstein files. Elon Musk today called his Department of Government Efficiency only somewhat successful in the effort. Today, in an interview with Katie Miller, saying that he wouldn't take on the project again. Musk said he would have focused on the companies, on his companies instead, whose products were vandalized after the spending cuts, and his overall branding that took a hit post-Doge and during the Doge process as well. And also in the business world today as well, Apple is cautious And its cautious AI approach is winning some new fans. As investors scrutinize competitors' massive spending and massive marketing campaigns, the company announced it's opening its foundation models framework to developers at no cost, another plus for the tech world, as well as some of the Reddit threads I've been seeing about this. And that allows them to build intelligent features that work offline and protect privacy, which has been hitting really solid strides with consumers and business leaders as well. Educational apps are already using these open models for personalized quizzes as well. So maybe an interactive model, transparency could be helpful in this AI wars as we go forward. In the entertainment world today, ABC has signed Jimmy Kimmel to a one-year extension through May 2027. My God, 10 years are going back now? Despite President Trump's repeated efforts and calls to fire him. The deal comes months after ABC briefly suspended Jimmy Kimmel, and his return drew 6.3 million viewers, the highest rating for a regular episode in over a decade. President Trump also took another shot at Jimmy Kimmel at Sunday night's Kennedy Center honors. The music world is also mourning Raul Malo today, the golden voice frontman of the Mavericks, who died yesterday at the age of 60 after battling cancer. Known as El Maestro, his operatic voice blended country, rock, Latin, and Cajun rhythms into hits like Dance the Night Away. Over 30 artists gathered at Nashville's Ryman Auditorium days before his death for a tribute concert. So sending love and prayers to his family. Again, we've lost so many incredible artists this year, Chris. This keeps getting worse and worse. We need to keep these artists around. They are the symphony of our lives. And finally, Starbucks is bringing back its viral Barista Cups, I'll say that, as prizes in their app-based contest through January 4th. It's been going viral across TikTok and Instagram today. Only 17,000 of the bear-shaped tumblers will be awarded after they sold out in minutes last month, causing some physical altercations in stores.
Come on, people.
Can you believe it? Again, it's worse than Black Friday. The $30 cups have been reselling on eBay. Get this. For up to $2,500. What's more barbaric, the fights or the pricing? I'd say the pricing on that one, Chris. And with all that being said, that is the rundown
capitalism
tonight.
Always comes out on top. Congratulations to those people. I want to go back to the story you did about the social media and how the administration is looking at people's social media histories. What is also interesting, you may have seen today, is effective as today. Australia just enacted a ban on social media for teenagers under the age of 16 years old. It's an interesting effort, and the Prime Minister basically said it's going to be one of the major cultural shift in the country. It's basically putting the onus on the social media companies, your Meta, your TikTok, etc., to police this and enforce this.
Right.
If kids or parents break the rules, there will not be any punishment. But I'm curious whether you think this will have a major impact, or do you think kids are going to find a way to kind of get around it?
Well, first of all, to be totally transparent, I support this legislation, and I also, I was in the EU for a few days last week, and one of the biggest pieces of legislation that's been passed in the last year is the Digital Services Act, where a big part of it is regulating what types of content should be banned on these platforms, age restrictions and verification processes that are being fought right now by these tech companies. And it's a pretty strong piece of legislation. The EU is not backing down. It's pretty bipartisan. The EU has 7 to 8 different parties in their commission and in what we would call their Congress. And most of them are unified across the board.
Do you think this could ever happen here?
I think it should. I don't think it will, because when you look at, we've had years to try this, and we've let Section 230, which is that moderation regulation, we'll call it, where these tech companies get they have a lot of liability protections for how they post things, how the algorithm spotlights certain content, and this age issue. They're not really held accountable very often. Now we're seeing lawsuits in the EU, we're seeing lawsuits in Australia, and again, across the board of their political parties, they're supporting this. So it's sort of like bipartisan or octopartisan, we'll say, out in the EU with the 8 parties they have there. But I think here in the US, there is a lot more of an obsession with social media, and we use it for a lot more things. We use it for news, we use it for fashion, we use it for shopping.
Sure do.
And I think it's going to be hard to do that from a consumer perspective, and to get that passed with how powerful
Yeah, I was going to say.
Tech companies are and how they're really getting close to the administration, whether it be streaming providers.
Now it seems like it's going to be up to parents. Josh
Yeah,
Rosenthal
sadly.
is going to talk about this tonight.
Good.
Coming up, Fox 5 News at 10. He talked to people about it as well. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to talk to Prince George's County Councilwoman Walla Begay about the state of power in Prince George's County, why electricity bills have been skyrocketing, and what you can possibly do about it. And it is a cold night, so this is on a lot of people's minds. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Yes, we can. We'll be coming to you right after this. All right, welcome back to the Live Zone Prime Time on this Tuesday evening. If you've been outside at all today, you know it was cold. We were just showing some of those live pictures all across the region, showing temperatures in the low 30s, upper 20s, felt even colder for most of the day. And if you aren't a fan of this winter-like weather, I've got some bad news because some even colder weather is on the way by this weekend. Winter has not even officially arrived yet, and that has some people cranking up the heat, but that also means spending some big money. Average electricity costs have gone up 11% this year alone since January. That's more than 3 times the rate of inflation, and more Americans are struggling to keep up. Now, electricity disconnections are soaring nationwide. So yesterday, Prince George's County Council member Walla Begay hosted a State of the Power meeting to take a closer look at this energy crisis, what's causing it, what can be done, and what resources are available for anyone struggling. And the councilwoman joins us live tonight to talk more about that event, why this is such a major issue for people, and what can be done about this. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Live Zone Primetime.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. We had this event because people saw bills that were double and quadruple. And we learned quite a few things. I actually started looking into this last year. And the reason why I had this event is because the community needed to be informed. We are on a 13-state consortium for power. Many people don't know that. So when they're building a data center in Virginia or in Prince William or Loudoun County, we are all on the same grid. What the utility these companies has been clear that the increase of usage in electricity, we're electrifying everything. In addition to electrifying everything, new homes are all electric. We're driving electric cars. We're opening up supercomputer data centers. So while we're doing all this, the grid is getting more usage on the grid, and we're closing down coal plants. So coal plants is old school. We're moving away from it, but as we close down coal plants, we haven't brought new power generation. What PJM said at the Qualified Data Center Task Force that I wanted people to hear is that we're looking at possible blackouts by 2027 if we don't get new power generation. And frankly, the more usage we have and the less space on the grid for all the usage, the cost goes up for residents. In addition, we also have the distribution side. Those costs has gone up as there's been rate increases at the Public Service Commission. So we're being hit on the distribution side, and we're being hit on the transmission side with the usage. So what we're telling people is that if the state of Maryland, we all have to get together and find a way to get more energy on the grid, or start to really use renewable energy in certain ways. If not, we will be in trouble in a year and maybe a year and a half.
Councilwoman, thank you so much for paying attention to this issue and bringing it to the forefront. As so many residents across the DMV have been saying this to us, and just in the street you hear about it. Let me ask you this. So when looking at generation of new power, retiring these plants, what are some of the tangible things that are being discussed at the council level and at the state level to bring in more energy? Is it more distributed grids with more renewables and then some more diesel generation? Is it LNG or is it propane? Like, what are some of the things being discussed that could be taken up before 2027 so we can avoid the blackout crisis?
Well, I know there's a project in Baltimore that could bring more power generation, and there definitely is that, nobody wants that in their backyard. But the reality is that if people understood how much we needed that to get the power that we need, they would not be so against it. So that's one of the things, is educating community to let them know what's going on. Our conversations are really at the state level. For data centers, they said that the data centers 20, 30 years ago are not the ones now. The older ones did not require as much power as the newer ones that are coming on. The newer ones are supersized. They're AI. They're connected with AI, so they require so much more energy use than the ones before. And let me just tell you, the bad news is I know at least in Prince William County, they've got 20 that are pretty much in line in the next 10 years. Even though they've stopped putting data centers, the reality is that we are reaching out to the state that maybe the data centers have to bring their own generation, bring their own power. Don't get on the grid, get them off the grid, because right now we're paying more money because data centers are getting on the same grid. And when people say, oh, don't bring a data center to Prince George's County because it's going to increase our electric bill, it's going to increase your electric bill if they turn on the ones that they plan to put on in Frederick, if they turn on the ones that they plan to build in Montgomery County, if they turn on the ones that are coming. We are all on the same grid, and that is actually was news to me, and something has to be done. So we are waiting for leadership at the state level to really help us get to where we need to be with energy now.
So this is obviously not just a Prince George's County issue, like you said. This is not just something that's affecting the state of Maryland, but this is really something that's happening all across the country, and some places are being hit harder than others. Do you think this needs federal intervention at a certain point to be able to help this? And also, I mean, just yesterday we were reporting on President Trump saying he wants to get rid of wind power. So some of those renewables that we talked about, that's not even going to be an option. So what can be done?
We do need federal intervention. We are reaching out to our federal partners to tell them at the end of the day, if this continues, the bills are just going to rise. We cannot afford. We have worked with the utility companies. They have agreed not to turn anybody off. But the reality is that if somebody we had an 88-year-old woman that had a $1,500 bill for 1 month, and then they're going to put her on a payment plan. She doesn't have money to be on a payment plan and still pay the energy for that respective month. So we're telling people, if either we do something or lights are out, either because of disconnection or power outages because of strain on the grid. So we do feel that there needs to be a little more of a state of emergency when it comes to energy. And that's why I wanted to include the people first to let them know what's going on. PJM said they're not a political entity. They are just really trying to provide power. So when they said we're looking at blackouts by 2027, they're not under any agenda but to let us know what their engineers are letting them know. And that's scary for all of us.
What are some of the tactics that you and the council, as well as some of your partners at the state level, are thinking about using to bring these data center companies to the table to say you may need to go have your own grid, or you may need to slow down your production of data centers or make smaller ones? Are there tactics being discussed that you all want to use for kind of more unofficial lobbying or community, like a community support and kind of grassroots movements?
Yeah, we really are talking about bringing their own generation. I mean, any of the data centers that's reached out to the county, that's something that we are asking, and they are familiar with it. And some are even willing to do it. So we think that that's the option. No new data center in any jurisdiction should get on the grid until we resolve it, because the reality is that while a data center is running, getting data, the reality is that the same grid is what keeps the light on in people's houses so that they can take care of their families, is what keeps their car running, is what keeps them to be able to do work in their homes. So once you start blacking out in people's homes and then they can't address issues in their households because their lights are out, now you're impacting people's every day, and that's not going to work for most of our residents.
Councilwoman, I hate to be a little doom and gloom here, but I was just looking up 30 years ago what gas prices were, and they were averaging around $1.25, depending on where you were. Obviously now they're 4 or 5 times as much, depending on where you are. Might this just be the new normal, that we're all going to be paying a hell of a lot more for electricity and our utilities?
No, we cannot accept that, especially if the strain on the actual grid is a data center that is paid for by somebody who's making quite a bit of money. We think that they should be able to pay their fair share. So if they bring their own generation, that's fair to us, especially because they're making money out of it. And it's survival for most of us. It's not survival for them. So I think that we cannot accept that. I think that we have to take a hard stance that they have to bring their own generation going forward, and that all data centers after a certain that are draining energy from the grid should be required to bring their own generation going forward. And I think if we get that on a federal level, that would definitely bring down the cost, because the cost, this is supply and demand. If the demand is high, the price goes up. We're paying Brandon Shores in Maryland to stay on to provide power because we cannot afford to have it turn off. At this point, we're paying them premium price. So we have to look at renewable energy. The scare for me with renewable options is that might take a while, and we need resolutions within a year and a half. We're talking about projects. Even building a power plant will take another 5-10 years, they said, to do that. So we have to have some immediate results now. And I think that taking some people off of our grid might be the answer.
Councilwoman, are there certain cost-saving programs within the council, not the council, within the county, as well as the state, that can be accessed by residents that may be dealing with a really high bill or may want to get subsidized or reduced costs from the county or the state? Are there programs like that for residents out there, and how can they access them if they are out there?
Well, we asked them to connect with their utility. We actually pay. It's so funny. I made a joke that years ago when I first, I got a letter from Petco that they had these energy saving options. So I went and grabbed them and I signed up and got all this free stuff. And I said, oh, I got freebies. What I didn't know is that on my bill, there is a line item for Empower, and you're paid for that. So those are not free. We ask people to reach out to their utility companies. The utility sends a lot of information we might ignore, but it's really important because, to be honest, I haven't paid a high bill because not only do I have solar panels, but I also have all of those energy saving things. So we do tell everyone, you're paying for it already. You pay that bill bill every month when empowered. That's what it's called. And you pay for it. So when you pay for it, you need to take advantage of all those opportunities. Get a solar panel, get all of those energy saving costs going. And if you have an issue, reach out to the council and your council member. We can connect you. You can reach out to the Salvation Army if you have PEPCO. Reach out to BGE. Each of them put $10 million a year to assist people with their bills. And if you are within a certain income, you can get that assistance. So we have been pushing people because many people don't use that fund. They don't apply for it. And we're asking them to please apply for it. And we are looking to the state. We are in a deficit right now. So we ourselves cannot pay everybody's bill, but we are looking at partnering with the state to come up with some solutions short term.
All right. Prince George's Council member Walla Begay joining us live here on the Live Zone Primetime. We appreciate you spending some time with us and spreading the message and how people can get the resources they need.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. We're going to leave you with some live pictures around the region, a cold night at the beach for sure. Tony P, when we come back, we're going to talk about a new option for flying right here in the nation's capital. Ooh. I know you're Mr. International Traveler. This would not be international, but a new option if you are not a fan of Dulles, BWI, or Reagan.
You're not a fan.
All right, welcome back to the Live Zone Primetime as we take a live look at our Fox 5 Skycam from the wharf, taking a look at Reagan National Airport, the airport that Tony P has probably spent a lot of time at because he is a frequent flyer.
Getting there, you know. I'm not in the million points category or the up in the air status yet, but that's definitely a dream of mine.
Definitely
have the big clapping and the celebration when I get my million miles. Maybe get to sit in the cockpit with the wings. I don't know.
I mean, I guess. In the meantime, though, you may have a new option if you are looking to fly in or out of the DMV in the near future. Commercial flights set to come to Manassas Regional Airport starting next spring. And tonight we're getting our first look at what the new passenger terminal could look like out there. Tisha Lewis was on this story for us earlier today. These new details emerging at the Manassas City Council meeting last night. Fox 5 obtained renderings showing what the expanded Manassas Regional Airport could look like once commercial flights are added. Airport Director Juan Rivera says destinations from the Manassas could include Florida, Myrtle Beach, Savannah, and New York, so some nearby locations. He says the airport is teaming with airport operator AV Ports to make expansion plans come to fruition, We're told AVPorts is managing the major commercial expansion, including reportedly fronting the cost of a new terminal, gates, and renovating the airport's existing terminal. Fox 5 has learned this will all take place in phases. So far, the airport has already undergone several FAA inspections. Right now, we're told negotiations are underway with potential airlines. In fact, Fox 5 has learned the airport may waive landing fees for airlines initially to attract more business. So Tony P, a new option to fly from. Do you like this?
I love it because it's close enough in that DCA area where I think it could take some load from the DCA issue, especially for members of Congress where they fly to Florida or they fly to maybe North Carolina, some of those shorter puddle jump flights. I think you could put a lot of that load to Manassas so that you wouldn't have as much crowding at DCA or any risks of potential crashes like we have seen and near misses like we saw throughout the year this year at DCA. So I think that's a big, big development, very, very positive. I also think it's kind of triangular with Dulles, DCA in the Arlington region, and kind of Manassas out this way. It's actually a pretty good spacing of having an airport right there. A third option, it's smaller, you'd probably have less traffic going through there. Also for private jets, there's a lot of private jets that go through DCA to go to places like the Hamptons, to go to Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard. I think a lot of those planes could be pushed to there too. So just anything that kind of trims the fat a little bit of some of the more redundant flights or some of the add-on extras, put them over there. I think it's a great idea, and I love the design of it so far. It's looking very, very nice.
I mean, one of the things we talked about, you know, with the TSA and the air traffic control was, you know, this lack of available employees, air traffic control employees, and especially the pressure that they were under at DCA. So if this took a little bit of that load off, I do think it would be a good thing.
Just
and like you said, I know that there was a time being there where they were suspending some of those private flights in and out of DCA to kind of take that load off of those air traffic controllers. In the meantime, speaking of flights, it looks like we've got that live picture up now. This is the president who will be departing Pennsylvania soon. These live pictures just went up, so that may be the stairs to Air Force One. It looks like it might be. The president up in Pennsylvania today spreading his economic message, making his way back to Washington, D.C. in just a little bit. Not too long of a flight, I imagine. I have made that drive up I-81 through Frederick. You know, you take 70 up through Frederick, then it turns into 15 through Gettysburg, then you jump on I-81 and you could take that right up through Mount Pocono on my way to the New York State line. Oh wow! Okay. So I imagine it's a much shorter flight than it is a drive, because it can take. Listen, I'm not gonna talk a little smack about my home state, but sometimes those Pennsylvania roads. Oh man,
he can take you home
down
a little bit.
Down to one lane.
No, I've seen some of those.
Construction,
especially central Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so you know, I guess flying is the much preferable option.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is, like, again, it looks like he's flying an Air Force Two style plane, not the full Air Force One. It's not as deep on the visual there for the body of it. It's a little skinnier, and I think that's because, again, the short nature of the flight. It's probably 20-25 minutes, if that, you know, take off to land. There we go. Take off to land like 25 minutes. So I think this is why he's doing that. And again, when you look at it, I mean, you know, a president can't drive. You know, can't have can't have the whole motorcade. I know that President-elect Biden, when he was president-elect back in 2020, I know that he drove maybe about an hour's worth of distance with the Secret Service back then. But the problem was that was during COVID. So you know what? Now the roads are a lot more packed up.
Well, it looks like Marine One just taxiing
you can't do that anymore.
So I'm not sure if the president will be departing from that, or whether we're standing by for
I
the
wonder
beast.
what that is. Yeah, I mean, is that because usually whenever there's a trip, especially a foreign trip or a long distance domestic trip, there'll be Marine One is involved. There's the Beast. There's many other cars that are parked underneath Air Force One. You probably don't need that here, so that's why they have the smaller jet. But it's just pretty fascinating watching the logistics of all this.
I was literally just going to say the same thing. We've had a couple Friday nights where we've had the pleasure of watching the trips to Mar-a-Lago, and just the sheer logistics, like you said, that we get to witness.
Oh, it's a lot.
What we're going to do is we're going to leave this live picture up. We're going to step away for a quick 2-minute break, but we're going to leave this live picture up. When we come back, though, we're going to talk a little bit more about the president, specifically the impact that he has had on DC's restaurant scene. Washingtonian reporter Jessica Sidman is going to join us live coming up next. We'll be right back.
We have Washington, D.C., the safest it's been in 52 years. Think of that. And a year ago, you couldn't walk down a street in Washington, our nation's capital. And now restaurants are booming, restaurants are opening. The restaurants were all closing. Now the restaurants are opening. You can't get into a restaurant in Washington, D.C.
So that was literally the president earlier tonight in Pennsylvania during that economic speech, talking about the state of D.C. and the state of the D.C. restaurant scene. And it is a message that we have heard before, Tony P. While we talk about this, I am going to just head back to that live picture out in Pennsylvania. But President Trump has spent the last few months bragging about the D.C. restaurant scene under his leadership. We have heard it multiple times at multiple events, him talking about it. Just this weekend during the Kennedy Center Honors event, he talked about how they were closing before he took office and now business is booming. However, industry insiders say otherwise. In fact, some say business is down and tensions are up. And the Washingtonian actually took a closer look at this earlier this week in a brand new article that's out right now. And reporter Jessica Sidman joins us now live to talk more about that article, the impact the president has had, and much, much more. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the Live Zone. All right. Sorry about that. All right, we can hear you now. So first of all, so the article is called The Trump Slump, but as you literally just heard him say in that, I mean, that was 20 minutes before we came on air, he maintains that business is booming. You couldn't walk down the street. They were closing. But that's not reality, is it?
Yeah, anyone who lives in DC can tell you that's just completely made up. In fact, you know, this has actually been a very difficult year for many restaurants, some even comparing it to the pandemic. And that's in no small part because of Trump policies.
And in terms of those policies, what are some of the specific things that have been cited as a cause of this slump? And are there potential ways that restaurants are trying to circumvent those to get growth back?
Yeah, there have been so many things just stacked on top of each other, starting earlier this year with the DOGE cuts and mass firings of federal workers, or even just the fear of them. When you're losing your job or afraid of losing your job, the first thing to go is, restaurant spending. So that had a big chilling effect. Then, the National Guard deployment in DC back in August, that similarly, people weren't going out when that started. And, some people calling it, a ghost town. One restaurateur downtown told me that business was down for him 30% compared to the previous year in August. And I've heard so many similar stories. And, another one that I think is a really big one is just the immigration crackdown in DC. It's no secret that the restaurant industry is run by immigrants. And so often when we talk about this topic, we speak about undocumented workers, but it's not just about undocumented workers. A lot of people who have legal status are afraid, especially when there was that big law enforcement blitz, many calling out to work, changing the ways they get to work, it's caused a lot of havoc in the restaurant industry.
In addition to all of those things that you just mentioned, you also write about how, there used to be a time where, as part of an act of hospitality, any restaurant would welcome members of any administration. You mentioned Martin's Tavern and how they had served every president up to a certain point. I believe it was George W. Bush. And then things changed during this president's first administration. And we remember what happened with the Red Hen and other restaurants that had, those sort of protests that broke out and the backlash that they faced on social media. So can you talk to me just a little bit about how things have changed from the first administration to the second administration, Trump administration that is, when it comes to how just restaurant employees, owners kind of interact with members of this administration? And also just kind of the fear that they have of taking a stand or being political in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you were saying, in Washington, you see politicians all the time at the gym, and the grocery store, restaurants. And, I think the norm in the past has been just let them be normal human beings doing their everyday thing when they're not, on the clock. I think the first Trump administration really changed that. DC is obviously very liberal. There's this very strong resistance movement, and you saw these very public confrontations when White House officials or other MAGA figures dined out in DC, notably, like you said, Sarah Huckabee Sanders getting kicked out of a restaurant in Virginia when she was press secretary. This go around, we haven't had as many clashes, and I think part of that has to do with the fear. Another thing is, the first Trump administration, a lot of those Trump world types, they all congregated at the Trump Hotel. And this time around, obviously, there is no Trump Hotel. So my restaurant sources say that, they're much more out and about on the town. They're, spending big, they're less discreet about their politics in public.
And when looking at the overall just kind of future for restaurants, right? We talk about not just existing ones, but future ones trying to come in. Are your sources telling you that some of these policies and the tension that we're feeling here in DC is restricting potential new openings, or expansion plans are being dropped? And if so, how does this impact consumers as we go forward into 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, I think there is a real fear that things are going to get worse before they're going to get better in the DC restaurant scene. According to the Restaurant Association, we're on track for record number of closures this year. That being said, we will have more openings than closures this year. But a lot of those openings, they're planned years in advance. And I have talked to a number of restaurateurs who have ideas for concepts, would like to do new restaurants, have even had lease opportunities that they've turned down just because of the uncertainty right now. They don't know, will there be more military on the streets that might turn off people from going out. Even just the process of building out a restaurant, a lot of those workers are immigrants, and people are having a hard time finding people to do the tile work or whatever it is you need to actually build the restaurants. So I think a lot of the effects we may not even see for years to come.
Interesting.
Jessica, so much of DC's bar and restaurant culture used to play around with this kind of sense of wonkiness, and whether it would be specials for different political things, whether it was members of the administration getting fired, etc.
State of the Union.
Yeah, State of the Union, all of these kind of big events type of a thing. Do you think this divisiveness will kind of change that culture and we won't see as much of that, despite the fact that DC will remain the center of politics here in our country?
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen it. DC, we're a bunch of politics nerds, even the bartenders. And, it's this quintessential DC thing that you'd have bars and restaurants riffing off of the day's political headlines with, these funny, quirky cocktail names, many of them poking fun of Trump over the years. But we really haven't seen a lot of them this time around. And I think part of it, I know part of it, because I've spoken to, bartenders and others, is this sense of fear that they're going to get backlash, not just, in an official way, but I think we're just in such a divisive time that, you risk being doxxed, or your staff being doxxed, or, just getting death threats for the simplest thing. And it's not worth it to a lot of businesses right now. Well, they're already dealing with a hard time.
And as these restaurants some are closing, and there is this sort of back and forth, are there things that consumers can look at and potentially take advantage of during this time in terms of reservations or pricing? Are there certain places that are doing specials, or are there ways that consumers, even if they may be a little bit tense, could take advantage of the kind of some of the openings, and be able to, have a good restaurant experience?
Yeah, I mean, if you have the disposable income, but the holiday season is a great time to visit bars and restaurants in DC. They'd be happy to welcome you, and I think just get out there if you can.
All right, Jessica Sidman, writing for the Washingtonian, the DC restaurant Trump slump. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the Live Zone Primetime and breaking down what's happening. I mean, I love reading what you do on the DC food scene, and so we really appreciate it.
Yep.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to leave you with some live pictures. Here at King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, you see that Netflix house. That's one of the new things. It's like an experience type. I'm not 100% sure. I'm talking out on my butt. But it's I do know where it is because it's out at the King of Prussia Mall. But in the meantime, we'll let you cycle through some of these live pictures. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the quarterback corner, because a lot of quarterbacks made some headlines today.
They sure did.
And a few right here in the DMV. We'll be right back. right, we're back down to the final 10 minutes or so of the Live Zone Primetime on this Tuesday night. And Tony P, we mentioned the quarterback corner before we went to break because a couple quarterbacks making some headlines, including some right here in the DMV. You're looking at some video right now of Jaden Daniels just days after re-injuring his left elbow. The Commanders quarterback was out serving the community. You see that video right there. I mean, this is just great. I love this.
Yep.
He partnered with Raising Cane's, which I've never been to.
You haven't?
And I have to.
Oh,
I
by the
have
way,
to go there.
the chicken fingers
Yeah.
are fantastic. I've done some campaigns with them in the last couple of years, and they are just absolutely fantastic. They're great people. The Union Station store is a lot of fun.
I'm starving, so this is selling me on it.
However, I'm influencing
he
you.
partnered with Raising Cane's to host a bike giveaway today at East Hall and Union Station, like Tony P just mentioned. All the bikes and helmets were donated to the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Washington. So we love seeing him out in the community. We love seeing that smile. Hopefully that means no lingering issues with his elbow as well. I know Coach Dan Quinn said yesterday that he was sore, but he wasn't expecting any long-term issues.
No, and he looks good today. I'll tell you, he is the consummate professional. I mean, he is someone who loves the community. After a tough loss like that, an injury, he's out there serving the community and doing this great Christmas themed celebration to help kids. He doesn't really go out very much. He's very grounded. He's focused on his craft. He loves the sport.
We know fans love him too. So
that's why I'm going to make a prediction, and I hope it doesn't jinx him. He's going to have a Hall of Fame career not just because of how great he is on the field. He has the willpower and the stamina and just like the courage to fight through this tough year. He's got a great attitude about it. He is going to be around for a very long time and a force to be reckoned with. And folks, watch out because he has the intangibles. He has it up here to be a true champion.
You heard it here first.
My opinion.
All right, let's head from Washington, D.C. over to Prince George's County because that's where former NFL star Colin Kaepernick was visiting Prince George's County schools this morning to launch an AI partnership. So Kaepernick's partnership brings his AI company Looming into schools, teaching children how to make AI-generated content. The program uses prompts from students to generate images and discuss ideas. Colin Kaepernick demonstrated the program for students and teachers. He says the program will remove barriers for students despite concerns the AI programs violate copyright and replace artists. I know there are a lot of questions still out there about AI and, but at the same time, you can't get left behind. It's here, it is the future, and it's interesting to see how he's partnering with local school children to really bring this into the classroom.
Well, right, and I think he's leveling the playing field, right? AI is here whether you like it or not. Should it be regulated? Yes, there needs to be controls on this, but the concept's not going away. And I think Colin Kaepernick's mission since 2016 has been about equity and providing students and communities that really get overlooked constantly with the resources and the training to engage with these pieces of technology or business or finance. He has been all over this with sports and recreation and opening doors for that. He has taken what he built, his movement in 2016, and has carried it to a bunch of different parts of the world and just different parts of business and commerce and social justice. And now he's doing it here with AI. I think it's very creative. When I saw the story, I'm like, wait a minute, like AI and Colin Kaepernick. Then I read deeper into it. It's part of his, mantra and his mission to bring these things to communities that don't get looked at as much as they should. And I think it's a wonderful idea that he's doing, bringing this to the classroom and really just giving, students of color in particular, as we've seen this, the opportunity to work with it, to learn, and I think just caps off to Colin Kaepernick.
Well, if you're a fan of his, this next story might make your head explode because we're talking about an unprecedented move in the NFL. 44-year-old quarterback Philip Rivers is coming out of retirement to rejoin the Indianapolis Colts. You see him right there on the sideline. That's according to ESPN. He is being added to the team's practice squad after multiple quarterbacks were injured in the team's game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We know Daniel Jones, former Giants quarterback, hurt his ACL. He's done for the season. He had a great season. No word on whether Rivers will make it onto the field. We know right now, practice squad. He retired back in 2020 after 17 seasons in the NFL. Philip Rivers is a grandfather Phillip Rivers has kids old enough to play in the NFL.
Lot of them.
Oh, yeah, he's got a lot of kids. He's got a lot of kids, but I think he has like a 23-year-old at this point.
I know. I mean, look, hey, you know what? He's probably very, very rich. I can imagine he's got a lot of money, but you know what? Hey, with a lot of kids, it's Christmas time. Not the worst.
Yeah, he needs the paycheck, is what you're saying.
Not the worst thing to get, again, just to kind of pad the stats, just in case, for retirement. You never know.
Yeah, isn't he already eligible for the Hall of Fame at the same time? But
wouldn't that be cool though? Again, you know what? I think it's also, he's a competitor, and he always has been. And I think, you know what? This is a great team that could use some steady leadership.
He's also a grandfather.
But George, first of all, George Blanda of the Oakland and Los Angeles Raiders, he was the Oakland Raiders at the time. He was the oldest quarterback in history. He also punted for the team. He was 46. Okay. Tom Brady was 43 playing. It's not impossible. He's had 5 years to rest. I think he's truly the example of a stable quarterback that I think could take an 8-5 team, win a couple games, get him in the playoffs, be a game manager. And I think with that defense that they have over there in Indy and those weapons, I think there's a possibility he could take that team to the playoffs. I do, because Daniel Jones had a really solid year. I mean, it's Pro Bowl year, I would think, if not an All-Pro year potentially.
That is George Blanda.
That
man
a 46-year-old guy to you?
like an 86-year-old man. No offense to George Blanda, but
I mean, it's scientifically proven. We have de-aged a lot as the years have gone
I don't know
on.
whether it's because
getting healthier. I don't know.
We're not smoking anymore.
Right. No more Parliaments or Marlboros or Mad Men style chain smoking.
Oh my goodness gracious!
My goodness. But I mean, again, I think Phillip Rivers is a talent. He can step on a field and do better than most quarterbacks in the league. In my opinion, I think he's solid, and he could win a few games for them. And what's really interesting too is that they have a solid running game. So you're not going to need him to throw 50 times a game. You just need him to be accurate, and that's what Phillip Rivers has been his entire career, is an accurate passer.
West Virginia Ben says, if you can still play, play. Also said, Netflix is in King of Prussia. It's like a Netflix pop-up. I'll do some research.
Right.
I'll have a better answer for you.
Well, funny about Netflix,
tomorrow.
What's interesting, so they had this whole big purchase or potential purchase with Warner Brothers. They had actually, there's reporting coming out today, that they had potentially thought about buying Disney and even and taking a look at those type of studios. Also, I think it may have been Electronic Arts. Let me take a peek at that.
Okay, while he's looking that up, this Netflix house is a newly opened large-scale immersive entertainment venue at the King of Prussia Mall. So I have no idea what that means, but I imagine it's sort of like an Instagram backdrop with lots of Netflix-related things, especially since the final season of Stranger Things is dropping right now. We're down to our final minute and change. Tony P, what you got?
Yeah, so it looks like, so they were potentially looking at buying not just Disney or Electronic Arts for the gaming side. They thought about buying us here at Fox. They were thinking about buying the Fox Corporation. So not just with, again, we're owned and operated by Fox. We would have been part of that deal potentially.
Yes, we would. And we're already streaming, so we're ahead of the curve.
That would have been an interesting merger. But again, they were thinking about buying not just one of these, but potentially two of these.
Well,
so they wanted to own a lot of real estate.
Not to get too into the rabbit hole here, but Netflix has obviously branched out into live sports. They've branched out into like live reality TV with things like the Love Is Blind reunion.
Right,
they
talk
have
shows.
those singing competitions. It kind of makes sense that eventually they may get into news. We'll just kind of have to wait and see.
And talk show John Mulaney's show.
Yeah.
They did the LA version, now they're doing the more national version. This is going to be the future of it, and I think again, Fox's content. And I mean, I'm not saying that because I work here. We're the most innovative at we're the number one in cable, and we're a solid asset.
You're not going to get an argument from me. Coming up on Fox 5 News at 10, Shamari Stone has more on that homicide at the Ebony Inn overnight last night. Wow. He's speaking to one of the family members, Josh Rosenthal, with more on that social media ban. That's happening in Australia, but he's talking about whether we could ever see something like that here. Coming up tomorrow night on the live Zone Primetime, Tony and I are going to talk to the Maryland woman, author, Family of Spies. It's a new book right here, 9 o'clock. In the meantime, we're going to leave you with that live picture from Reagan National. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.